Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Piece of Us podcast. I'm your host today, Crystal, and I have my amazing husband next to me.
Oh, that's a sweet introduction. Thank you. I'm Aaron.
And then, we have a special guest, two special guests today. Max is actually behind the scenes, behind the camera. He's normally on here hosting with us, but he is doing all the mics and everything today. So I feel like it's so important to learn different aspects, and he's excited. So our two guests are two people that have been very special in my life growing up. They were a huge influence. I would spend every summer with them. They lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. But welcome to the podcast, my Aunt Bonnie.
Hello.
And my Uncle Steve.
Thanks for having me.
My amazing husband.
Woofa.
That's a good intro, too. So I'm really excited to have you both on here today because you guys have been such a big influence in my life. And growing up, this is kind of an embarrassing story, but I'm going to tell it anyways. And I think my Uncle Steve knows where I'm going with this. My father passed away when I was young. And so I didn't really have a father figure growing up. And I really looked to my Uncle Steve as a father figure. And he was there for a lot of special moments, including the first time I started my period. So it was so funny. I mean, I was young and I was spending the summer with them, and we were actually in, I think, a Godzilla movie. And I started my period in the movie. And so I didn't know how to tell him, and I didn't know what to say. And I waited till the movie was over, and I was like, hey, can we stop by, a grocery store or something on the way home? And he's like, why? What do you need? I was like, well, I started my period. And he started freaking out, but it was actually really funny because he was like, well, what do we do? What do you need? Oh my gosh. And then we go to the store and he's going through the aisles and he's like, I don't know what to pick out. What are you going to wear? And I think we both had our panic moment together. But, it was good though, because he didn't make me feel embarrassed by it. And he didn't, he was just a father figure that was there for me, even when it was probably super uncomfortable for him. What were your thoughts on it?
Way out of my element. We had to deal with it. The whole story, though, end result was I said, just go down that aisle, get what you need, and then we'll check out. What do you guys want for dinner? Okay. We want hot dogs. Okay, cool. So we had everything. So I get up to the cash register, and I got a box of Kotex and a package of weenies.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. That doesn't sound right.
And the teenage kid that was checking out, he looked at me and I said, don't even go there. And he just kind of backed off, but that was the funny moment for me after the fact,
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize that we asked for that. So that's kind of but I think we just didn't know. You know what I mean? You're just young and you just, you're not in your element of your normal home. And so it was just kind of but I just appreciated you being there, even if you didn't come down the aisle with me.
Well, I didn't know, So.
Yeah.
Well, we never had kids, so we never really went through all that.
Yeah.
Our kids.
So you guys did struggle with infertility growing up. Or not growing up, in your adulthood.
Well, actually, we were growing up together.
I mean, growing up.
Yeah, we grew up together, so.
That's very true. So what was that experience like as far as, because IVF was just coming out, correct? And so you guys went through that process.
Twice.
Oh, twice. So what was that experience like?
Well, it was exciting and scary. And ended up being sad, but I don't regret doing it. It was...
The technology was so new back then.
Very new.
It was.
And so I feel like they didn't have all of the kinks worked out or all the different things worked out with it. But I have to say, you guys both really inspired me, and which is why I did surrogacy. So I've done 3 surrogacy pregnancies. And watching you guys go through that experience, I was young at the time, but I was like, if I could ever give someone a baby or go through that process where I could help somebody create a family that they want, I'll do it. And so I've talked a lot in like other videos or like on our YouTube channel about how you guys inspired me to help others. And now there's 3 people out there that have families because of you guys.
I can't remember how many times Crystal came to me and said, I just wish that I could have a baby for Uncle Steve and Aunt Bonnie.
Aw.
Like, seriously.
I know. I would have too, had I been
was-
older at the time.
That was probably the most heartbreaking thing to go through it twice. And I remember getting home on the second time, coming home, and I was just devastated. And the next day, the phone rang, and Chelsea was born. I remember Jeff calling me and saying that, and I just slammed the phone down and just ran and cried, and
So, did they know did we go through IVF at one point?
No, well, we didn't go through IVF, but we went
Fertility.
like
Fertility
fertility treatment.
We,
Yeah.
we struggled getting pregnant with our second child, or our third child, sorry. And I'm curious, like, what was the difference? Did they know immediately that it didn't work, or was there a
Well,
waiting period
You
afterwards?
go through the whole process. The biggest problem for me, as we were going through it, was having to give her injections 2 times a day.
Oh, they're terrible.
and
I can
Yeah.
give animals
bruises.
shots all day. Giving her shots because she's anti-needle anyway, always has been. That was the toughest thing for me,
The-
The end result and how bad it took her down haunted us for years, couple years.
Oh,
and with a big credit card bill.
The drugs then were astronomical expensive
We actually got them
from
from
France.
France.
From
We
France?
couldn't afford them in the
We
States.
couldn't afford them here.
Oh, wow.
oh wow.
And we lived in Overton at the time, so we would go back and forth. And I know they wouldn't ship to a post office box.
It had to be shipped to the house, but one of
Yes.
us had to be there.
Yes.
Oh, to
Because-
sign for it.
Yeah, that
And it had to be refrigerated.
immediately,
Yeah, immediately.
Oh wow.
And then the mixing, it's a
Might
long
say.
process. You go through that, and then I forget exactly. It's almost like a 6-week process of taking the drugs.
Well, the first time when I went through it, all I did was, with all the medicine and stuff that they gave me, I'm trying to think of the name.
I can't think of it now either.
Yeah, but
So
all
what-
the hormones, I guess, just produced big cyst in my ovaries.
Oh wow.
And so
No
in this,
eggs.
yeah, and the second time when I did go through, they were going to go in and retrieve them. They gave me an epidural and everything, and when they went in, it turned out that it was a big cyst.
So with a
Again.
lot of your like symptoms and different things that you had, like I'm almost positive that you have PCOS. And it wasn't something that was talked a lot and diagnosed a lot, at a younger thing. But recently, well, not recently, I guess a couple years ago, but our daughter, Hallie, was diagnosed with PCOS. And one of those side effects is possible infertility. And she also, there's cysts, there's different things with the PCOS that you go through. Did you ever get any kind of diagnosis or any kind of anything from a doctor?
No,
Okay, there's another side to that coin. Okay. A few years prior to that, I worked at the Nevada Nuclear Test Site. I redlined more than once. My sperm count was almost non-existent to start with. So that was another big factor.
So you guys had both of those factors, or you guys had. So what was your biggest takeaway for those struggling with infertility currently or going through something like that? What is your biggest, I guess, life lesson from it?
don't give up.
That's it.
Nowadays it's easier to adopt. Back then, you had to go on like a 10-year waiting list.
Oh my
A
gosh.
10-year waiting list, unless you wanted an older child. And I just felt like I needed the whole experience. I wanted the baby,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, because I'd never had kids. I didn't know if I'd be able to handle, you know, a child that was already half raised or, you know.
A lot of people have said it, but there's no. I mean, there are guidebooks now, but there's no real guide to being a parent. And I totally understand wanting to go for an infant, you know what I mean? And so you get
Yeah.
that full growing experience, but also growing with them and
Right.
learning how to parent. So,
Right. Yeah, that was the main thing. And I didn't have a lot of support. You know, my mom was supportive, but my dad, all he could say is, "Why are you doing this? You're not going to make a good mom." And
Oh,
I'm
that's
like,
terrible.
I know, I was just devastated. So I felt like I had no support, just Steve and I alone on this journey.
That was it.
But I still don't regret it in any way. I never regretted the credit card bill I had. I really didn't. I thought it was a well used money, you know?
Money well spent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Money well
it didn't work out for us, but I think that anybody's having problems and want to, pursue that, technology's a lot better than it was then.
Yeah.
We're talking 35 years ago.
yeah.
Right.
And then years later, I had to call my doctor that I went through for IVF because something to do with the test site again. And after talking to him, he said, "You know, the problem is you were going through menopause. That's the reason why it didn't work for you, Yvonne. That's why we told you, well, Bonnie, that we told you that you had to get a donor because you were already going through menopause." So
Oh my gosh, that's at such an early age.
I was in my middle 30s, yeah.
Wow.
And I didn't even have my first period until I was 16.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
yeah,
So her window
That's
of
crazy.
opportunity was.
was very
It's
short.
very short.
Yeah.
Well, I consider you guys my parents. I have an amazing mom, but you're definitely have been a second mom to me. And you've been pretty much the only father figure in my life for most of my life. So you guys have an unofficial adopted daughter over here, and that I really appreciate everything you
We've
guys have done.
kind of
for me.
always felt that way anyway.
Yes. Well, I've
And-
always absolutely just adored you and Aaron.
Aw,
You guys
Oh,
have helped
be honest.
us.
Thank you.
The first time you met
Seriously.
me, you didn't like me.
That is so
the
not
first time
true.
I met you was comical because you whispered to Crystal, "You realize that your aunt's dogs match her carpet?"
I did say that. And they did. They
Yeah,
matched
they
the
did,
carpet.
So moving on to animals and dogs. So how many dogs have you guys had?
Oh my gosh. A lot.
A lot.
They've had, well, what was your favorite breed that you've had?
Wire Fox Terrier.
Yeah. Wire Fox Terrier.
Really?
Yeah.
Why that breed particularly? Like,
Well, that's a story all by itself there. I'm not allowed in pet shops at all.
Because you
Okay.
come home with too many?
Well, we walked in to this pet store and we had 3 at home anyway, Well, actually 2. But
Tink and Dandy.
yeah. And there was this little dog in their little aquarium affairs, a little Wire Fox Terrier, and this Sheltie was just beating it up. I mean, just ragging on it. And I told the lady, I said, "Can I see that puppy right there?" Because I'm thinking, just get her out of there for a little bit, She handed me this little Wire Fox Terrier puppy. And the second I picked her up, she wrapped her paws around my wrist
Oh.
and just looked at me.
Oh.
I was just walking around with Bonds going, "What's going on?" I says, "Molly's going home with us."
I said, "You've already named her?"
She was getting mauled. I mean, it was
Oh,
a
Molly.
no-brainer.
That's cute.
So the Wire Fox Terriers, we bred her later on, and she had a litter of puppies. Okay, we can never do that again because I got attached to all of them.
oh no.
Oh, no.
we kept the one girl out of the litter because Molly was always roughing her up, getting her screaming, and I don't know why. After they got cruising around a little bit, the little female was outside. Molly roughed her up, made her mad. She whipped all of her brothers and tore into her mom, and I says, we're keeping that one.
Oh my gosh.
So that's where the wire fox terrier thing came in, and they were the best dogs, you know.
Aw.
They got in a lot of trouble.
Well, yeah, they were.
We used to have fish, and we set up the camcorder because we would have to go all the way to Vegas to work. And we were wondering why the fish were so distraught when we'd get home. They sat like a table like this, but the aquarium was in the center and it was glass.
Okay.
And those dogs sat and harassed those fish all day.
Oh, no.
Oh,
There was
On
two-
each side of the aquarium. Back and forth.
Yes.
Them fish were running their
oh.
life, I thought, all day,
All
every day.
Yeah.
That was my first experience with a ball dog. So one
dog.
of their
Misty.
dogs, it was named
Misty.
Misty. I would throw balls for her all
Oh,
day.
a ball dog.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. I thought you were talking about a bulldog. I was like,
No, a ball dog. Like a dog that loves
She would
to chase
she's
a ball.
like Maddie, but she would chase a ball until her feet bled on concrete.
Oh my gosh.
gosh,
Oh,
You
she
had to
was
take it.
worse than Maddie.
really?
Hours and
She would
hours.
sleep with a tennis ball.
She'd only put it down to sleep and drink.
That's
it.
cute.
So
Oh. Okay, so moving on to addiction, which is kind of what we briefly talked about last week. And I feel like it's a really important topic, especially in our day and age in our world right now. There's a lot of people that are silently dealing with addictions. And we're not talking about just drugs and alcohol, those kind of things. I mean, there's so much other. I know Aaron wasn't on our last podcast, and we talked a
Oh,
little bit
no.
about your video game addiction and how it was like 90% of our fights in our marriage have been about video games.
They really have.
It's been a lot. But what was your experience with it? And do you know that you have an addiction, or are you just all of a sudden there?
I think I always knew that I had it. I think one of the hardest parts of addiction is with an addiction, you don't want to acknowledge that it's an addiction, and it's like, I know it's a problem, but at the same time, I enjoy doing it. Or I think most addictions are based in you get some sort of, release, or you're getting something out of it that you aren't getting somewhere else in your life. And so for me, I do believe that I know I have a problem sometimes if I don't control it. But yeah, I try to. I think the hardest part for me with video games is I always I have like, for instance, I normally play video games at night, right? And so for me with video games, I'm playing at night. Well, to reaffirm playing video games at night, one night I was playing late and Hallie came to me and told me her issue.
Yeah.
And I have all these kids. And so it's like, Crystal goes to bed early. And so I've always felt like, okay, I'm the one that can stay up. And, if there's a problem with the kids at night, then I'm there for it. Well, the problem with that mentality is, okay, so now I have something that's reaffirming like, hey, you need to stay up and play for a while. You need to be up because something's going to happen and you're going to be up and you're going to be ready and you'll be able to take care of it. Well, 99 times out of 100, nothing happens with the kids and everybody goes to bed, no problem. But, in the one instance that it could potentially, prevent something from happening, then I'm there. And so the hard part about, me playing at night is just that. It is like I make up this narrative in my mind that I'm going to do something or I'm going to be ready to do something if something happens. And most of the time, nothing would happen.
Yeah.
But it just reaffirms that I got to keep playing.
So how did you break the addiction though? Because I feel like we're in a really good place. I feel like I talked about it that we went through marriage counseling and we went through all the different things. And it wasn't just you, it was my lack of communication. And there's a lot of things that play into, broken relationships or relationships that need work on. But is there one thing that in particular that helped you?
You.
Well,
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a couple different stories, but so there's two times in my life that I can remember somebody telling me something that was like an epiphany in my mind, and it's impacted my life, my entire life. So I had a friend, Adam, when I was younger. This is not a part of addiction, but just a quick story. So at one point, he and I were talking, and it's like, it's normal for a kid to go to their parent and be curious how many sexual partners they've had. And Adam and I were having this talk, and he said something just so blatant to me. And he's like, I want my kids, when they come to me and ask me that, I want to be able to say that their mom is my only sexual partner I've ever had. And I thought that, and that statement to me, it still plays in my mind to this day. It is so impactful, and I've tried to mimic that with Crystal. And
what do you mean you tried to?
no, I have, obviously, but it's something impactful like that. And so the second situation that is really stuck in my mind was, so I woke up one day, and this was before Crystal and I knew, or before I knew we were having trouble. I woke up and I went to Crystal and I was like, Crystal and I have always been planners. We've
We like
always
setting goals.
we like setting goals and stuff. And so I was just feeling really good, so I went to Crystal and I was like, let's have a goal setting session. Like, where are we headed? And she's like, I want a divorce. And those words will forever haunt me, but in a good way. It was at that point that I realized, okay, I'm doing something so wrong that she wants to walk away. And Crystal's not a quitter in anything. And so for it to get to that point, it really just showed me that, okay, I really need to stop and take a personal inventory because I'm doing something wrong. I'm clearly pushing a boundary that I shouldn't have been pushing, and I was doing it for way too long. And so that to me, it's always stuck with me. And so now when I'm playing games and I think maybe it's becoming a problem, or I even think that it might be a problem, that plays in my head. And instantly I can turn it off and walk away and do something else.
I think we've gotten to a good place where we can communicate about that, though. Like, you can come to me and be like, hey, am I playing too much? Or like, what's going on? Or like, I feel like we check in with each other regularly now. A lot
Absolutely.
more than back then. And so I feel like the communication is so key when it comes to addictions, whether you're communicating with a spouse or a brother or sister or whoever you have in your life, but communicating how you're feeling is important.
100%. I still think you're working on that.
Okay, I've always not been the best communicator. I've always been the quiet one that kind of evaluates the situation and more of a people watcher than I have like to be the one in the conversation communicating. And it's something that I've really worked on over the years. And it was something that I didn't notice until I went to marriage counseling. And a counselor had to point it out to me. But I always kind of knew that it was a thing because I was just kind of always, the people watcher of a situation. So, okay, going on to you two, what role has addiction played in your life and kind of what did you learn from it?
Well, I think I should lead this off. The addiction that I had that I denied for years, alcoholism. Okay, I started drinking, as a teenager. It was weekend parties with my older brothers, and, that was just what kids on the farm and rural areas did. We'd go out somewhere, build a fire, drink beer. It was all good. As the years went by, that just perpetuated. When I met her, we closed the bar someplace every Friday, Saturday night. We were out drinking, dancing, honky tonking. Rural areas, it was a different world then. You know, that was recreation in small towns. Through the years, she could drink, she was fine. Me, once I started drinking, I just kept drinking. I had to keep that elusive little buzz going. And it's like any addiction, you get that taste of it. You want to keep it going. Well, after a while, it takes more and more to get to that point. And it just, over a period of 35 years, you know, the breaking point for me was, well, we'll get to that, but what she put up with me, my attitude, drinking and fighting, you know, and later on, I was one of those blackout drunks. I would wake up someplace, have no clue how I got there or what happened leading up to there. Wake up in jail, you know, that's a messed up feeling.
Yeah, but what you're not
Yeah.
telling them is we were both broken
Yeah,
when we got together.
that's
We
true.
both came from probably
But,
not good situations.
okay, but those are, I've learned this over a period of time after getting past it. Those are excuses. You know,
It's true.
you fall back on weaknesses and burying your feelings. That helped you think.
Right.
In all actuality, it doesn't. But we were both more or less there. You know, we had a reason. We thought if we drank, okay, it took it away for a while. But it was there the next day, you know. That compounds. It compounded bad with me. She kind of rolled with the punches. Now she can have a few drinks and be fine. I have one, I'd have 50. You know, that's just the way it is. It's the way it's always going to be. You know, you never get, I don't think I ever got past that. I'm dealing with it, but it's not a nagging feeling that used to be with me every day, every waking hour.
So did you drink? I know you said originally you drank just because it was fun and it's what you did, to party or whatever the case was. But did you drink in the future to mask or feel better about situation or your past or that kind of thing? Or was it something else?
It kind of snowballs to the effect that, okay, when you get in the construction world, drinking after work, drinking on the weekend, that's a cultural thing. That's just what everybody did. And a lot of times I would go out not really wanting to drink, but peer pressure, you were an oddball if you didn't. You know, so for me to fit in, that didn't help matters either.
Construction sites get a lot of. But I get what you're saying in the fact that if you aren't doing something, you get ragged on pretty hard.
Way hard.
Yeah.
And it was really bad, you know. And because I spent so much time as a kid by myself, I wanted to fit into a group. I needed to be part of what I was doing. And in my mind, that was the way to do it, you know. And that just manifested over the years. A lot of the jobs later on in life, for whatever reason, were isolating. Okay, drilling and blasting, you're way out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just you. You and your equipment, you know. Powder crew shows up, helps you blast. They go away, you go right back to it. It's been that way most of my adult life, you know. Now I drive truck, you know. Talk to
As
myself
isolated as
for
it gets.
miles at a time.
Yeah.
But I've always been isolated like that. I don't work well in a big group of people. Never have. So that didn't help matters either, you know. the turning point for me was waking up in jail was bad. Okay. The last turning point for me that really made an impact, I was driving truck, hauling U.S. mail. I woke up in an emergency room with one whole side of my face just destroyed, with her standing over me, you know. Had no idea what had happened. I got to the point to where I was drinking because I could handle it, you know. Nobody would ever know the difference. When I woke up and realized that had I not fallen off a dock on my face, I would have been in control of an 80,000-pound murder weapon hour later.
That's scary.
That was the greatest stroke of luck for me because that happened. Otherwise, I may not be here or someone else may not be here because of me. That really jarred me loose. Okay? Knew that I had a problem at that point because I'd denied it for years. The physical addiction was horrendous. It took me a long time to get past that. You know, I
Just
was
like the
drinking.
withdrawals coming off of it.
Huh?
The withdrawals.
Withdrawals, the guilt, and realizing everything that I put her through the years. That's hard to just push aside. You know, it took me a long time. I walked away from that job simply because I knew that they were going to terminate me anyway. So I turned in all of my credentials, all of my equipment, everything, and just walked away. Nobody said a word because, you know, I knew.
Right.
Through that period, I had to do a lot of soul searching. I had to really understand and come to grips with what I had been doing. That was tough. And I don't think I really, even her standing by my side through this whole thing, most women would have said, it's been real. She stood beside me the whole time. You know? When I made the turning point is I was trying to get another trucking job. Well, every time I'd put an application in, whoever was looking at my resume would call my previous employer. Has he ever tested positive for alcohol? By law, he had to tell them, yes, he had. So I hadn't talked to this man for a year,
Yeah.
about a year.
Yeah, at least.
I filled out an application, and it was everything I could do to call him. And I asked him, I said, you know, I have no right to ask you for this. But if this employer called you, can you give me a recommendation and kind of soft soap the alcohol abuse thing? He was real quiet on the phone. And I thought, yeah, there's no way. And I left this guy in a lurch because he had me in a management position, and I dropped the ball big time. I was working on a road job outside of Kingman, driving a water truck at the time. And he was based in Vegas, where we just, you know, moved from. He didn't say anything. He says, what are you doing tomorrow? We had a lot of rainy weather, so the whole road job and everything was shut down. He says, come and meet me in Vegas tomorrow. And I thought, I'm going to get my ass whooped, probably, you know, because he was very vague about the whole thing. And I thought, well, you know, I kind of got it coming. So I drove from Kingman over to Vegas, met him at his yard. I got out of the truck. He never said a word to me. And I says, well, here I am. Then he started talking. And he says, I have been exactly where you are. He was the recovering alcoholic from years prior to that. He says, I know what you're going through. And he says, you can be no good to me or anyone else until you do one thing. And I says, I'm open, you know. He says, you have to forgive yourself first. Because until you can do that, you're going to be no good to anyone else, me or anyone else, or yourself. That was tough. I mean, because I didn't know even how to go about that. And he says, okay, when this road job that you're on's over, you come over here. It was just before Christmas. He says, I'm going to put you back in the truck. And I'm going to watch you like a hawk. I'm going to get you past this. He says, because somebody did it for me.
Wow, that's really powerful. Because a lot of people talk about like asking for forgiveness from everybody else and making things right. And all of that is really important. But what people don't talk about is forgiving yourself. Because I think we're our own worst critics a lot. And I think our internal dialogue that we're playing in our heads to ourselves is sometimes even way worse than other people around us. And so I think that's huge.
You know, because asking for, you know, that's all I did was ask her and everyone else, please forgive me. But at the same time, I was beating myself up inside every waking hour. I just could not believe. Number one, I thought that I was so lucky to have fallen off a dock as opposed to the alternative.
Right.
He picked me up and dusted me off, and every time I saw him, he would walk right up to me and stand nose to nose. He wanted to know if I was drinking, you know?
Yeah.
That, to me, was the turning point to where I knew, now I'm getting past the physical part of it. I was starting to feel a little better. And he was coaching me every day. How do you feel about yourself today? Where do you see yourself going? I need to hear these things from you. I don't want to hear them from somebody else. He walked me through the worst part of it. Put me back on the map. That's when I decided I'm never going back there again. Because now it's not a physical addiction or a mental addiction. It's a matter of choice. You know, I could choose to go back there. And I choose not to. And here's the number one reason. So in short, I still have addictions today, but there's only two of them. Actually, three.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Her,
I'm addiction.
I know exactly what you're talking
4
about.
dogs. Okay? And I'm still addicted to nicotine. Okay? Those, in that order, are the addictions that I have. And I'm kicking the nicotine down. I mean, I'm not at the level where I started. I mean, I was smoking 3 packs of Camel non-filters a day. I started out vaping, because that's the only thing that got me off the cigarettes, at 30 milligrams. Now I'm down to 2.4. So
That's good.
that's going away.
Yeah.
I hope this one doesn't.
Aw.
And I'm going to outlive my other ones, so hopefully.
Aw.
But addiction's a real thing. But the thing that I want to specify here is there is help out there. And it may be somebody standing right beside you that you don't know. Like, I never knew that the man that I worked for was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I had never seen him drink, but I never thought anything about it, because when you're coming off a truck job, you don't bail out and have a six-pack of beer. It's just a different culture. There's help out there. But you can have all the help in the world offered, but if you don't want it, it's not going to do any good to find it.
That's what I was going to ask is I know from like an outsider watching somebody struggle with an addiction, what is the best way or what can you say to help that person? Or is there anything they can say?
I can't speak for drugs because I never really got into the drug scene simply because I figured that, okay, if I can't lay cigarettes down, anything stronger than alcohol and cigarettes, I'm done. With alcoholism, the one thing that I've seen over and over, you can see a person drinking every day. You know they have a problem. But there's nothing that you can say or do that's going to change that. They have to hit rock bottom. Something has to happen that jars them so strongly that they realize, okay, I need help. Until they get to that point, nothing you can say or do is going to change that.
Oh, that's hard because you just want to like
You want to help
You
someone?
wanna help
You
them
want to
so
shake somebody.
bad.
You
She
do.
tried for years, just in my nose about it. And hey, I didn't have a problem.
Yeah, but everyone thought I was the nag.
Yeah,
You know, they didn't
But that
see
was
what
the-
I seen.
that was the culture that we were in. Everybody we knew drank. I thought it was fine. I thought I could get away with it. I was invincible. If I had something to drink before I went to work, I was bulletproof. I could do anything. That's the attitude you start getting. You have to have something happen like it did to me, so severe that it jars you and you realize, I got to do something. Where do I go from here?
Yeah.
And that road from that point forward for the first year and a half, 2 years was tough. It was a hard road to go back. It's a road I'm never going to see again. I can guarantee you that.
What was your thoughts on the whole thing, Aunt Bonnie? And is there anything, I guess, that you felt like you should have said or done, or like it was just all out
You
of your
know, I
control?
felt like over the years I had, I didn't have my family behind me. I didn't have my friends behind me. They all thought that I was doing it or causing it or blowing it out of proportion.
When everything opposite of that was true. I was the problem. She was just trying to hang on.
And I also thought I didn't realize it was as bad as it was either. Because, like I said, I grew up in a house, and he did too, where that was the norm, where people drank and smoked and,
Yeah.
So,
It's hard. And I feel like, doing foster care over the years, like there's a lot of bio families that have addictions and different things that, affect the kids' lives. But we've actually had some kids come into our home who has were currently going through addictions. And Aaron and I think we're kind of naive at first, thinking if we just love them, if we just hold them tight, we get them into therapy, we do all these different things. But the biggest thing that we're currently realizing, and we have realized a lot, is they have to want it for themselves. And they have to choose to A, recognize that it's an addiction, but B, to want to, work through that. And it's hard as parents to have to constantly, be scared of those addictions and try to do everything as a parent that you can possibly do. But at the end of the day, they're going to choose. And it's been a really, really difficult thing to go through. And so hearing your story really helps, though, that there is hope and
There
there
is.
is people out there, and it may take just the right person saying the right thing at the right time
And
to
I think
really
I
help with
ran
them.
from a lot of it. You know, we both worked. We didn't work the same shifts. He was either working night shift, swing shift. I think I became a workaholic and a shopaholic. Something to just escape from what I was having to go through in life, and you know,
There's so many different aspects of
there
it
is. It just
that you know, this is a great forum to talk about it, but there's no way to talk about all of it
Right.
no.
because it affects every segment of your life, regardless.
And maybe this was why we weren't meant to have kids too, because I wouldn't have wanted to put my kids through this. I mean, we
Neither
were
would I.
so broken and dysfunction, and it took us years to realize that. It really did. I think leaving Vegas was probably one of
It's the best thing we ever did.
the best thing we ever did.
Best
Yeah.
thing we ever did.
I remember you guys saying to me at one point, because I had stayed with you for the summer, and I was like, I just want to stay. I don't want to go home at the time. But I was like, let me stay and go to school here. Like, I want to go to school. And I remember you both like came and sat me down a little bit later, and you're like, you're not going to school in Las Vegas.
No.
And the amount of drugs and violence and different things that go on in some of the schools there. And I'm not saying every Las Vegas school, but it is sometimes a really big problem. But it's in all schools. You know what I mean?
It
There's
is.
so many schools that are currently broken that administrators, teachers are trying their best, but there's just so much going on that it's just impossible, you know? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, one person at a time and one thing at a time and taking those steps. And I'm really proud of you for overcoming your addiction. And I know it's not something that you just like, oh, I'm over it and I've moved
No.
on. It's
You-
something that
you-
you'll struggle with, but
You know it's there. I could make a choice and jump right off that bridge again. But I don't have the strength to crawl back out again. I know I don't. If I did it now, I wouldn't survive. I would lose her right off the bat.
I wouldn't let it happen.
And, she says she'd stand by me. She has, like a rock. When
Uh,
everybody was firing down on her because she was in my face, because I didn't see it. I didn't have a problem. She had the problem. That is wrong on so many different levels, but you have to get to a point to where you can see that.
yeah.
And that's hard to get there.
And I think going back to what you were saying, Aunt Bonnie, is like you became a shopaholic, you became a workaholic, you were trying to cope in any way that you knew you could.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of what I did in our relationship too, is like I just became silent. And I stopped communicating because I didn't want to be the nag. I didn't want to be the one that was always bothering
Right.
the other person. I didn't want him not to like me because I was annoying or whatever the case is. You run through all these scenarios in your mind and you have to deal with it too. You have to cope. And people can turn to other addictions. They can, start working a lot. They can stop communicating. They can, all of these different things. And I think that that's something, though, that should be recognized in dealing with addiction just in general is you got to communicate and you got to speak out, even if it feels like you're talking to a brick wall. But I think that the words matter.
They do.
That's one thing I can say. We really never fought. I mean, I never threw anything at him or
No, we
cussed him out,
were
or we would just get mad and
argue back and forth. The thing that used to upset her so bad is I was a lot like you. For the sake of it, I would just shut down. She would be so upset wanting me to talk through things, and I just wouldn't communicate at all.
I'm a communicator. I want
She,
a resolution
you guys
to
know
the
she's
problem.
gonna if she's got an attitude or an opinion, you're gonna hear it whether you want to or not. You know
We
that's.
love that about you.
Yeah, we love that.
It took me a few years. I love that about her too, but I wasn't gonna admit it in those days. You know, I didn't want to hear it. That's one of the biggest complaints she's had with me, and still does periodically today. Is a subject will come up, I'll still stonewall it to a certain extent. But I think we communicate a lot better now than we ever have. I'd like to think so anyway.
Yes, we do.
It's amazing.
We do.
So the takeaways this holiday season is if you know somebody that's been struggling with addiction, reach out to them and see if there's something you can do to help them. Check in on them. If you're that person struggling with addiction, reach out because there's definitely resources for all sorts of addiction.
Yeah, there is.
And kind of like Uncle Steve was saying, like there's so much to this topic. It's impossible to talk about it all in one sitting and, you know, work through all the little details and the little coping skills.
But anybody that is here or has been here knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
The people that are going to get through it will see it. We don't have to sit here and write it all out for them. They already got it on the back of their hand. They just have to be able to stop and see it.
And never give up on the one you love. Never. I think that's what kept us together is I was just never willing to give up. I mean, I just...
Go back to this story when we first got together. I was running from my family. She was running from hers. Mm-hmm. Okay? Her thought was, well, let's just move in together. And I'm going, that ain't happening. You know, why? I says, because it's just too easy to pick up and leave because you have nothing to lose. You got no ties. I says, if we're going to be together, we're going to get married. You know, in those days, everybody we knew got married, lasted 6-8 months, walked away.
Yeah, but I always looked at marriage as it's never just one person. I don't care what the circumstances is. It's never just one. And if you don't fix what's going on, you're going to have the same problem with the next one and the next one and the next one. It's like a cycle that never ends.
You know, we were in an argument a few years back, and we got to the point to where we had different point of views, so we just break down and say, okay, we have to agree that we disagree. Okay? Simple as that. And we were sitting there thinking, and I said, this has been a joke that I've told the family over the years. We decided that we're going to stay together for humanitarian reasons. And she's going, I don't understand. I says, well, look at it like this. We're saving 2 other normally happy people from us.
Oh my gosh.
So after 43 years, I hope I have another 40 with her.
Oh, that's
Me too
so
with
sweet.
you.
You guys are so sweet. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast and just being so open and vulnerable and sharing your story because it really will help somebody out there.
Okay. I told you coming into this that I was nervous coming into this, but I feel a lot better now.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
You know, because I don't think I've ever sat and explained to anyone where I am.
We're all so proud of you. And cheers to another 80 years together. Technology is changing.
Well,
and you
we're
don't
getting
know how
around
long you're
pretty
going.
feeble now, 80 years. Wheelchairs have gotten a lot better too, though. So.
It's like it's well ever changing. So, all right, thank you guys so much and for being a part of all this with us. And we will, I would say, see you guys next time. But if you're on podcast, we will hear you next time, right? I don't know. All right.
All right,
peace,
you guys.
everyone.
Peace.
Happy New Year.